The wind cut sharply across the empty plaza, tossing fallen leaves across the stone walkway as if nature itself was restless. And there, standing alone before the towering memorial wall, was John Kennedy, shoulders tight, hands buried in his pockets, and eyes fixed on a name he hadn't spoken aloud in over 20 years. For passers-by, he was just another man paying his respects, but anyone who looked closer would have seen it. The weight of unfinished grief pressing down like a physical burden. Job had avoided this place for years, burying his memories beneath the noise of daily life. But on this morning, something inside him had refused to stay silent any longer. He hadn't planned to come. He had woken from a dream at 4 a.m., the kind where Mark's laugh echoed so realistically that John had reached out toward the emptiness beside him. By sunrise, that familiar hollow ache had returned. The one that whispered that he owed Mark something more than silence. So he drove away without breakfast, without telling anyone, without a plan A, following a road he had promised himself he would never take again. And yet here he was, anchored in place by the name carved into stone, Mark Delaney, his closest friend, the man who had once vowed they'd both make it home. John's chest tightened as the memories surged. The roar of gunfire, the blinding dust, Mark's voice shouting at him to move, and then the sickening realization that Mark wasn't behind him anymore. Survivor's guilt is an echo that doesn't fade, and John felt every vibration of it as he stood at the memorial. He ran his fingers lightly over Mark's name, each letter a reminder of the years stolen from him. The world around him blurred out, the traffic, the footsteps, the flag whipping in the wind. For John, time seemed to stand still. That's when he felt a presence behind him. Not close, not intrusive, just a broken bar steady. The type of presence that came with shared understanding. A man in a faded army jacket approached with slow, deliberate steps. His hair was silver, and though age tugged gently at his posture, he carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of someone who had not forgotten discipline. He held something in one hand, a small brass challenge coin with worn edges. It caught the faint morning light, glinting softly. He stopped a few feet behind John and waited, as if allowing space for whatever moment John was having. There was an air about him, a quiet respect that made John's throat feel tight. When the man finally spoke, his voice was roughened by years and memories he didn't have to explain. "Mind if I stand here with you?" Job hesitated, then nodded. It's all right." They stood side by side in silence. No small talk, no forced condolences, just an unspoken bond forged in experiences most people could not begin to comprehend. The older veteran stared at Mark's name long enough for John to realize this wasn't just a polite gesture. The man understood the weight of names on a wall. After a long moment, the stranger stepped forward. He lifted his hand slowly, deliberately, and offered a crisp, meaningful salute. A salute filled with respect, a broken bar, and something deeper. Something John recognized instantly: a brotherhood, sorrow, gratitude, and a solemn vow to remember those who couldn't return. The gesture pierced something inside John. His breath hitched, and he blinked hard to keep the tears at bay. But grief is not a thing that obeys the will. "You knew him?" John asked, voice barely audible. The older man lowered his hand. "Didn't have to," he said softly, "but I knew men like him. I knew that look on your face long before I ever saw it today." John swallowed. "We served together. He saved my life, and I've been trying to figure out how to live with that ever since." The veteran nodded knowingly. "Survivor's guilt," he murmured. "You carry the stories, the moments, the last words, a broken bar, and the questions that never get answers. But listen to me, son, surviving isn't a weight you're meant to drag. It's a torch you're meant to carry." John clenched his jaw. "I just don't know how to do that." The veteran turned the brass coin over in his hand before gently placing it in John's palm. The warmth of it surprised him. "This is for those who keep going," the man said, "not because life gets easier, but because someone believed they should. Every name on this wall represents a life lived with courage. They'd want you to live yours the same way." John looked down at the coin. Its surface was scratched and weathered, like it had traveled through countless battles of its own. Holding it felt like holding a piece of someone else's strength, someone who understood the invisible wounds that never made the news, never appeared in photos, never healed neatly. "I don't even know your name," John whispered. The veteran gave a faint, almost shy smile. "Name's not important," he said. "What matters is that you don't walk away from here thinking you stand alone. None of us do." He rested a hand briefly on John's shoulder, a firm, reassuring then began walking away. No dramatic exit, no last words, just the quiet dignity of someone who had learned to live with his own ghosts. John watched him go, wondering who he was, where he came from, and how many burdens he had carried on his journey here today. But when John looked again, the veteran had already merged into the slow-moving crowd at the edge of the plaza, disappearing as quietly as he had arrived. For the first time in years, John felt something shift within him. The grief didn't vanish, but it loosened. The guilt didn't dissolve, but it no longer felt like a chain. He turned back to Mark's name, resting his hand against the cool stone. The sunlight broke through the thinning clouds, painting the memorial in warm gold as if the day itself had softened. "I'll do better," John whispered. "I promise." He stood there for several more minutes, inhaling deeply, grounding himself in the moment. Then, with one final look, he stepped back, not away from his past, but toward a future that finally felt possible. As he walked across the plaza, he thought of the veteran's salute, that silent gesture of solidarity. It felt like permission, or perhaps a reminder that healing is not forgetting. Healing is learning to carry the memories without letting them break you. At the edge of the plaza, John glanced over his shoulder one last time. The memorial stood tall and still, each engraved name gleaming in the late morning light. And for just a moment, he could almost imagine Mark standing there with that lopsided grin, nudging him forward the way he used to. John gripped the challenge coin tightly. He didn't know exactly what he would do next day, but he knew he would do something. Something meaningful, something worthy. Because those who gave everything deserve more than tears. They deserve a life lived in their honor. And for the first time in 2 decades, John Kennedy was ready to truly live again.